I love it. You mean to economic stability?
Not stability, to just explosive growth.
Okay,
One thing I do want to talk about at some point, because I have a lot of folks saying, hey, tech's great, tech's wonderful, but really explain the support element and how. And this is another thing that I told Eric, we're going to really focus on this. We're going to increase dramatically the number of people who are using our local bus system. We're going to force the bus system to become something that's relevant to the workforce by making their priority, getting people from where they live to where they work fast. The bus system is going to begin to really concentrate on establishing agreements with large employers to determine how many of their employees actually use the bus. Pay an upfront amount, give the employees all of them a free pass.
Yeah. No, it was maybe two before that.
So why don't you talk about? Why don't we talk about urban density and how there's an impact on urban density? So if you want to talk about the impact outside of tech, I would still argue that if you look, even if you look at the mission for our state, that technology is at the forefront, and we are the number 4 state in the United States.
Number
relative
4 for
to
what?
Technology.
Like
Yet
sensors.
no one knows that.
Is that because of the Orlando, Tampa?
It's all over.
But is it simulation?
No, you have to think about technology, right?
So it's a .NET area. Tampa's really exploded.
Well, let's talk about that. I think that's very important. We kind of lay out that's the case, and what does that mean?
So, but number 4 in technology isn't just about.
The person from Nebraska has moved here.
What?
The guy from Nebraska was looked all over the United States for a place to live and bring his family. Decided that Tampa was up and coming and was the place out of all the places in the U.S. to live.
Really?
30 minutes. We're done.
No. I'm going to go back home, so we're going to leave in the morning. We made a decision to leave in the morning. I still have to pack and all that.
Good, you got the coffee.
We're live?
Ready? We're rolling? We're going. We're on. Hey, we're live. It's a Friday morning hopping. We're at Buddybrew Coffee. You can see the line's long. Everyone's here getting great coffee. I got a bag of my favorite Ethiopian blend. So if you've got nothing to do, since you're sitting at home, come over here, have a cup of coffee, and we're talking tech. We got some great people at the table, and really, what we're gonna discuss some of the big things that are taking place in Tampa Bay. We had BarCamp and Startup Grind. Startup Grind is a really cool concept, which I think is going to put Tampa Bay on the map for tech. But let's jump right into this. Joy, we were saying right before we started taping that the state of Florida is number 4 when it comes to tech.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So when it comes to technology and innovation, so whether it's technology that comes out of the university systems, whether it's technology that is tech companies, everything from the Space Coast to the .NET community to biotech to technology manufacturing. But being number 4 is something that no one really, I think, outside of Florida, and even half the people here don't even know.
How did we get to number 4? What was there anything that I said not that we did, but what was done to create this environment that put Florida in the position of being number 4?
I mean, it's happened over 5-6 decades. It's not instantaneous, but you've had various different tech companies that have been built here, that have been sold, that the employees stay, go build another company. You have it's the space program for sure, and a lot of that business that created technology for the government, because we have SOCOM here and things of that nature. There was a logical progression. I mean, mesh networks, most of the wireless technology that's in use today in the United States actually came out of the state of Florida, from a Wi-Fi perspective. Most people don't know that. I had a wireless technology company that's now owned by Hewlett-Packard, but like mesh networks over on the corridor and stuff was one of the people in the forefront for the technology that's used in the field deployments for military around the world for communications at the field level.
So people don't know this. I mean, everyone thinks that if you're going to be trendy and cool, you got to go to wet Washington State. You can come to Florida where it's sunny, beautiful, and enjoy, our great weather, but also find a good high-wage job. Ken.
Yes.
You travel all over the country.
I have. Yes, I have.
Consulting, telling people about how to expand their business operations.
Telling people how to build products, and that's one of the things that's
Are we
kind
building
of
products here in Tampa Bay?
Not enough. Not enough. I mean, Joy talked about a lot of great companies that we've had over the years, and really, if you look at the state of Florida and look at how the various cities have evolved, and we had the Space Coast and everything, all the investment with NASA over there, and then a lot of empty space. The city that has been the most rinse and repeat has been Miami.
True.
Because if you look at the way Boston was, rinse and repeat, digital equipment and all the different spin-offs that came out of that, both in networking and software, we had a lot of that in Miami. We had a lot of companies out there that spun out of Boca Raton and IBM's facility down there. Citrix came out of there. You've had a lot of interesting software companies, a lot of interesting consumer plays come out of Miami. We don't see the same here. We say, Tampa has kind of a rise and fall. We'll have a company that it grows from 5 people to 20 people to 50 people, and then maybe either gets acquired or moves. But you don't see those people go right back into something else, and that's where Boston and Seattle.
But are we beginning to create that environment? Are you
are
starting to see that?
We are, but again, it's a big shift from being a service industry, primarily a service economy, to one that's balanced between product and service. Services are never going to go away, but we just need to re-swizzle the mix a little bit so we have more people focused on products, meaningful products, products that have a big impact, scalable companies that ship to a lot of different places. And that's, apps are great and, websites are great, but it really is something that can scale on a very, very, large enterprise or government
Didn't
scale.
I meet people, Brenda, at BarCamp that really were those type of, they were the folks that were working in these companies or creating these businesses, making these products. Is that what BarCamp's all about?
Well,
What is BarCamp about?
BarCamp is really about people that are willing to keep up with their profession, keep up with technology, and they want to find others like themselves, and they want to have a day where they're exploring cool stuff. So I think what has changed here in Tampa in the last 10 years is that you have enough people. There's that critical mass. The density has finally occurred. And that people, with these types of things that we've done, and it's not just the events, BarCamp's once a year, but it's the people get to meet each other and they continue those relationships throughout the year. Then there are other things that they can go to. Again, 10 years ago, there really wasn't much for anybody to see or do or find each other, but now there's a lot more. You'll find that people really have very solid networks of people, and they have the ability to make 1, maybe 2 phone calls, and they can find other people when they're working on a project.
Well, let me ask you, you mentioned density. Joy, we've talked about density and the need to have a high concentration of people that do the type of work that we think would create high-wage jobs here in Tampa Bay. I was talking with Jonathan Cordeau. I think it's Launch Track.
Yep.
It's this company. And he was talking about coders who are capable of doing open source coding. Do we have that? Do we have the density of tech talent here that a company such as his or others like his could come here and find the employees that they need to be successful? And if not, what can we do to get there?
Okay, so I think you have a couple of things. So to kind of tie back to what Ken said about Miami, so one of the reasons that Miami has done a good job of the rinse and repeat is because people made the decision not to move.
They want to live there.
They made a decision to stay there and to be able to create the business, and they're like, I'll stick it out. We're now starting to see more people in Tampa make that same decision. We lost a lot of talent. I mean, for huge companies like Wufoo and Wikipedia and those kind of guys who bailed, right, because somebody offered them a better deal to go somewhere else. So we're starting to see people, and Jonathan's a very good example of that, who made the decision. They said, I'm going to stay. I'm going to build my business here. I don't think we should get sidetracked by the fact, do we have some of that talent? We do. One of the problems we have here is you have 2 camps. You have certain people who will pay for that talent, because that talent lives here in many cases, and it works for companies that aren't here. Okay? Because those companies that aren't here pay the right wage. So if I have a choice, if I'm a developer and I can live in Tampa, Florida, and I can make $150,000 a year working for a company that's based out of Seattle, it's a great example. I know about 5 people who that's the scenario for, right? Versus working for a local company who will pay me $80,000, what am I going to choose? Okay? So part of the dynamic is we have to close that gap in the local companies. But the other thing, and Jonathan's company is a good example of this.
You're going to choose Seattle. I'm a little slow. I'm a government guy.
I'm not going to choose Seattle because I don't want. I mean, I'll choose to work for a company in Seattle, but I'm going to choose to live here. So people will make decisions. You don't have to pay as much money, but you can't pay half the wage.
Right.
Okay. There's something said to being a part of a startup and doing those kind of things for people who want to do that. It's about the growth. But the other thing you have to think about is we have a global economy now. You know, Jonathan has some developers here. He also has some developers that live in some very disparate parts of the United States, right? And that's the normal today. So don't try to make it something different. The goal is make it a good environment. People will continue to come, right? And if part of the employees are somewhere else, that's okay, because if the business is based here, right, you still get tax revenues, you get all those other things. Make it a great environment for that. And then when people come back and forth, they'll go, well, gosh, I would rather live here than I would in Seattle. It costs less money. It doesn't rain every day.
I'm starting to see more of the area development.
It doesn't rain every day in Seattle.
All right, it rains 4
out
of 7.
I was there a week ago. Like it said, I was kind of surprised at the level of dreariness, and I want to be very, very flattering because I love Seattle, and anybody from Seattle who's watching it, it's a great, great community, and we're proud of you. We just have sunshine. But let me ask you, we're talking about a great place to live. The one thing I can tell you, Seattle, Portland, Dallas, Austin, people who are there love it. Detroit. I mean, there's a lot of talk about Detroit. You tell someone from Detroit
awesome
to move,
now.
it's awesome. People are saying this is a cool place. Here's what should be I think, the coolest place in America. What is it? I mean, what has held us back from being
Economic
You
honesty.
see a long line of folks here who want to get coffee. They're all cool. But what is it what has held us back?
It really comes down to honesty. Honesty is the first casualty in economic development discussions, because people say
Honesty is the first casualty in politics.
Politics as well, because people look at something like this should be good enough without really understanding the motivators. This is the problem in any tech company, especially when you really have strong tech founders. You get so enamored with what you have and the technology and how cool it is to you, you think that is the value proposition to everyone else in the world. And it isn't, because you've got to go out, you've got to understand who the customer is and build your product based on what they need. And from a political point of view, from an economic development point of view, we don't do that. For economic development, the customers have always been the developers, the banks, the lawyers, not the people that are going to build companies and lease the space or occupy built space. And so you need to understand what those people are motivated by.
Well, we've got Stephanie Zvetic, who has single-handedly transformed the economic development apparatus in Hillsborough County from one that's focused on going after your large corporate entities and getting them to relocate to focusing on startups. You've got EDI2, Stephanie, and Go Knowles. Stanford won last night. We were happy about that. That kind of helps us with the old rankings for the national title, but we'll talk about that later. EDI2, is that not about trying to grow our own community of startups? What is it?
No, that's exactly what it's about. To Ken's point, when it comes to the traditional sense of economic development, I mean, in any community, even these communities, the Seattles, the Austins, we always do the comparison. Traditional economic development is always going to exist. In those communities, in these communities, it needs to. It has its place. But I think the thing that is just so invigorating and exciting about what's happening here with the EDI2 program is that the communities that we see thriving, that we're looking to as models, have recognized this. We're recognizing that, sure, we have traditional economic development, but economic development can also exist when it comes to the startup piece, and that's what this program is doing. Building the ecosystem, supporting the ecosystem, so we can move in that direction
as well. And we have two examples of the ecosystem sitting right here. We get the ecosystem to my right, BarCamp. We get the ecosystem to my left, which is Startup Grind. What is Startup Grind, by the way? It sounds like a really good coffee. But what is it?
No, but we give away coffee mugs if that helps.
I'll be there. I get a shirt if I go to her BarCamp. I got one of those. I get
have to find a mug for Mark, so it's like.
So what is this?
So Startup Grind is actually a global organization. The gentleman who founded Startup Grind is a guy named Derek Anderson. He's actually from Carrollwood, so he's born and raised here, went to school here. And he moved out to Silicon Valley about 9 years ago because he was working as a developer for Electronic Arts. And they offered him a great job. And so he moved out there. He did that, did a couple more startups, and then decided to do his own thing. So 2 years ago, he decided to found Startup Grind. It's now in 60 cities and 23 countries around the world. And so we have chapters everywhere. I'm helping him create the momentum in the state of Florida. So we started with Tampa. I actually got some people in Jacksonville, so Jacksonville will be starting up in another month. I reached out some friends over there, and I've done the same in Orlando, and then we'll be doing one in Miami. So there'll be different chapters all around the state.
Who will you highlight?
So the goal is, every chapter is run by a serial entrepreneur. So you have to be, So they're all run by entrepreneurs. Once a month, it's a fireside style chat, and we invite in successful entrepreneurs, in the community. Or in some cases, you might have a VC as a guest, right? A venture capitalist. Think about things that are of interest in the startup community. You could have someone running a particular program, that sort of thing. But we'll have different people coming in and out.
Do you have to watch it? I mean, do you have to go to attend? I know it's $10 to attend.
So early entrepreneurs, $10 in Tampa, but we feed you and we give you something to drink. Sometimes we let people have beer.
Whoa.
Just saying, Cigar City beer.
Good.
Cigar
City beer, I'm there. Okay. Wow. Why did you say that? I'm going to think about Cigar City beer.
So the reason we charge is because we distribute the videos globally. So the money goes back to corporate to edit, distribute the videos globally, and push them out so that people in Mumbai can actually see what's going on in Tampa Bay.
So you can watch it.
You can watch it, but we're at the Commerce Club at the Oxford Exchange upstairs. But if you go to if you Google Startup Grind Tampa Bay, it will come up. It'll show you the events that are out there. And the upcoming event on the 21st during Global Entrepreneurship Week is Ashok Kartham. And if anybody doesn't know who Ashok is, he is the CEO of Mize. Ashok is a serial entrepreneur. He built and sold his last enterprise software company in Chicago, and made a sizable amount of money. Made a decision to move to Tampa to start his next business because he wanted to live in Tampa. Started Mize here, and we just recently elected him as the president of TIE Tampa. And he's going to talk about how TIE Tampa is also changing its direction. And the goal now is to actually make more investments in companies, which they've made 2 already, in startups that are here in Florida, versus just hosting events. So instead of putting on lots and lots of networking events, we're actually going to make investments in.
And if someone were to look up TIE, it's TIE.
TIE Tampa is TIE Tampa, the Indus Entrepreneurs Tampa.
Yeah, it's an amazing group. I mean, when I go to those events, I always see Akash Patel there and the other and those who attend. But I mean, it's an amazing group of people who are really, I think, helping Tampa Bay kind of again nurture our ecosystem.
Yep.
Yeah, it's never one big thing. It's a lot of little things. It's like the presence of TIE. It's like the government offering something like EDI2 and understanding they have a place in being a feeder to this. It's all the educational institutions, but it's also all the grassroots community organizations that all come together just in time to help this momentum build. And so it's a lot of different things that give us the balance that Stephanie was talking about.
Because, look, we just had a big announcement that I know our county staff and Rick Homans and others were involved in with the announcement of the USAA and the 460,000 square foot facility and 1,615 jobs that are going to be created over the next 5 years. Areadevelopment.org, which I go to every day to look at where companies are expanding, growing, or relocating, talked about this on the 5th of November. So if you want to go to areadevelopment.org, you can get information on this. But, that's big. And we can see big. Our economic development folks can make that announcement, and get excited about that. Rick Homans can talk about that, But it's harder when you're talking about small companies. And so in the past, there's been this tendency to want to say, well, a mom and pop or 2 people or 3 people, we've looked past it. But it seems like the smarter communities have understood that the real growth in jobs and the excitement seems to be not that we're diminishing the importance and value of the large corporate entity that's going to expand their headquarters or bring it here, but we're beginning to see the value of lots and lots of small stuff that's happening. Is that right?
But you need both. So if you think about it, right, for every high-wage, high-tech job you create, right, every one of those jobs, you get 4 service jobs as a byproduct of that, whether that be a call center job or something of that nature. So, create one of these jobs and get 4 of the jobs that pay from, $25,000 to $60,000 a year as a byproduct. So if I can pay for development of one job that creates a $100,000 job, and I get 4 jobs that make $50,000 on top of that, then I created 5 jobs with net wages of $300,000 a year. That's awesome.
Well, and I think it's back to what you guys are saying, and we really are all very much on the same page here, and I think it's so wonderful. And I think the most exciting piece is that sure, we are excited about USAA, we are excited about Amazon.
Very excited.
The community should be. Yeah. But I think the thing that really is getting us excited from the economic development perspective is that this conversation is happening. And the conversation has not happened in the past. So the fact that we are getting excited about the small things, the small events, the small conversations, the connections that are being made, the small companies, the ones, the twos that are growing, you know what? The fact that that is a topic of conversation, that it's something government leaders, community leaders are finally excited about, I think that speaks really volumes for where this community is going.
Well, go ahead.
One other part of leadership is that the important part of a lot of these little groups that are emerging is that there is this organic growth from leadership in that development community, that people see, hey, something's happening, and oh wait, we're missing something. Oh, I guess that must be me. I need to step up. So we have the people that are actually doing the things, creating the products, looking at new things, and they're looking for each other, and they're creating more things on their own. So we're seeing a lot of people starting things, Co-work Tampa, some of the other types of organizations and events and people. And that leadership is important. It's not something that's top down. It's coming from the actual community itself. And I think that's another thing that's very important that's really changed in the last 10 years.
Density helps that, but really what we've lacked in the past has been visibility.
Right.
We lacked visibility. People didn't know about each other. And this is not just, kind of like just a networking angle. It's just understanding that there are other tech people, and a lot of them in the Bay Area interested in creating new things, interested in creating new products, and interested in meeting people who have that same level of passion. Whether it's for robotics, whether it's for makerspace and hackerspace, or if it's someone who actually wants to buckle down and create a new product and a new company, which we've seen spin out of BarCamp, we've seen spin out of Startup Weekends, and we've seen just happen organically as people get to know and trust each other and work with each other, go, you know what, I need some help on this project, I now know who to call. Whereas before,
well,
you
know what?
Didn't have visibility to that.
And everyone can jump in on this, but I'm just going to, a little historical analogy, but as well, Clifton's book, Coming Jobs War, or The Jobs War, which really struck me as a seminal work that talked about the fact that we are at war, and in a sense, globally, trying to create jobs. And everyone was jumping around looking for government to do something. Maybe we'll build, like you said, that big shiny building that will attract the jobs. And what I'm starting to recognize is just like in the American Revolution, if you go back, I'm reading Nathan Philbrick's book, Bunker Hill, which is a phenomenal history book. But Bunker Hill and Lexington Concord, there was no organized army at the time that took on the Brits. What it was everyone coming out of the woodwork together and taking on the most powerful army in the world at that time. And what I'm beginning to sense now is that this revolution is taking place across the planet, but here in the United States in creating jobs, it's being driven by just lots and lots of people who are emerging.
Yeah. But that's true. I think, part of it, some people did it out of desperation based on our recent economy. I'm just being honest, there's a lot of people that ended up starting their own businesses because they didn't have another option, right?
Yeah.
Or they said, well, hey, I'm tired of being, and I think this happens a lot for people who become entrepreneurs, right? They've been working in big companies. It's like, I'm tired of dealing with layoffs. I'm tired of dealing with all the other stuff. You know what? I'll just do my own thing. I'm a smart person. I've got a good idea. I'm just going to go do my thing.
Well, that's what this Buddybrew Coffee, Dave Ward, he worked for a realty company, and he was roasting coffee beans out of his garage and realized there's an opportunity for a business. And this startup for Buddybrew has been explosive. That's one of the reasons why we're here.
Yeah. I think if you look at it, that's really true. And I think, when Kim was talking about the events and stuff like that, I'll tell you what I think's really changed, having been here for 13 years now. I think that the kind of events have changed and what you get out of the event has changed. So if you tell me I can go to another networking event, I'll tell you I don't care. I'm like, okay, I can, that doesn't interest me. If I can go to something and I actually get to hear someone talk about, their experiences or what they've done or about their knowledge, which is why I like things like Code Camp that Microsoft puts on, or or BarCamp, or coming to Start Grind, or something else where I'm hearing someone talk about their experience. That's much more interesting to me because I get to know about the person, and that's worthwhile going and meeting the person after the fact. Right, so it's like, oh, now I know somebody, so I've got this, or oh, maybe I can help you make this connection. And like, we want to talk about BarCamp. I actually stood there and matched up 2 people. I was saying at BarCamp, somebody looking for a role, and they actually hired the person that I matched up with. Literally the next day, I got an email from somebody going like, oh yeah, thanks so much for the intro. I've got this big project now. I've got a 6-month project I'm working on for that entity. And at Startup Grind, like, the events are cool, but this will be the third month, 90 days, right, on the 21st. Right. And in that time period, 2 founders have met each other. So 2 new groups are working on 2 new companies, and an investment has been made in one of the companies that a person was at the event. So if you tell me that what's the impact, that's much more impactful than somebody came and showed up and talked.
Well, even here, I mean, I've noticed what I love about what we're doing with the coffee on Fridays is I got folks now who do come in and they want to meet you. They want to talk about an idea they've got. Maybe they, how do I come up with the money? They want to talk with Stephanie. They want to talk about, the Knowles or EDI2. They want to understand, though, how can they, qualify for the $2 million fund that we've established to help nurture our environment. So if you want to learn more about EDI2, you got a question, you can find Stephanie Svedicek right here every Friday for coffee. Brenda, BarCamp, Health Camp, Code Camp, all the different camps we got. Startup Monkey sitting over there.
Idea Camp.
Yeah, Idea Camp. A lot of connections. But let me ask you this. You're young. You're, 24, 25. You're single-minded and you're passionate about creating a startup company. And you're sitting at home and you're working, but you need help. Where would you, do you go to Startup Tampa Bay? What do you do? What do you, you say you can connect to get information. But let's just say you got this idea, you've been working on your concept, and you want to take it to the next level. What would you suggest?
I think there's a lot of events out there. So there's co-working spaces where you can go meet. There's a geek breakfast in Tampa every month.
And St. Pete.
And there's one in St. Pete. There's a geek lunch, a dev lunch in Tampa every month.
A number of meetup groups.
If you go to meetup.com, which is where, if I'm going to another city, right, and I want to go find out what's going on, I'll usually go to meetup.com. I know it sounds weird, but I'll go meetup.com, so go that, like I'll be in Atlanta, Boston, and Detroit, and New York in the next week. So I would look and see. I'm actually attending 2 events while I'm in Atlanta. I'm attending one in Detroit, and I'm attending another one in Boston. So go look and look startup and in that city and see what's there. If there's a meetup, or look at the city where you're at or the area where you're at and look at startup or startup program or
Google
start this.
Co-working in any city, you'll find out where the geeks are hanging out.
It's pretty normal. I think when you're 22, you know this. It's kind of in your head because you've grown up with a phone in your hand at that point. But look at that. Look at what's going on university campuses in the area that you're going to. What kind of programs and things are available there? At Startup Grind, we had students from UT. I had about 5 students at the last one that were from the UT Entrepreneurship Program asking great questions, I thought, and asking for help with their businesses. And then we had venture capitalists. So you kind of had and everything in between. So you had the whole gamut there.
And USF's got a new innovation incubator they're opening up, and the students gave me the information. I apologize because I took your card, I stuck it in my bag, and I not pulled it back out, but I believe it's the 18th or 19th of November at USF, and it's an innovation incubator. Mm-hmm. I don't know much more, but we're getting to see a lot of those type of things springing up.
On the 19th, actually, it's their B launch event.
There we go. Okay, what is it again?
It is from my understanding, it's an incubator for students at USF.
Cool.
From not just the engineering school, but from all over campus. I think it's going to be a really tremendous launch venture for them. But on the 19th, I do know that they're having an open house beginning at 1, and then at 3 o'clock there's a ribbon cutting, and there's going to be, I think...
ribbon cutting, I'll be there.
I know, I was going to say government. So, but I think a lot of people from the community are going to be there, and I think it's going to be a pretty substantial networking event, so I would encourage people to attend.
And we've talked about that here before. USF has a huge patent portfolio, and I think this is one of the ways to expose that to people and say, what if? What could you do with this? And this is USF's way of monetizing that, exposing that patent portfolio, and if 1 out of 100 actually use something and create a product and create a company on it, it's a win for USF and it's a win for our
It's a
our
win
tech
for the
community.
community, absolutely.
That was my understanding of what it is. It's actually that the entire point, or at least the email that I got that it supposedly explained it, is to license their patent portfolio. That's the intention. Which I think is cool. It's like they've never done this before. They've never opened the doors to anyone.
Did you say the 19th of November?
It is the 19th.
I do believe so.
Yes,
One second.
because on that day, I'm being inducted as an honorary member of the National Academy of Inventors. Isn't that funny?
And that's up at USF. Yep.
That's up at USF. That's right.
Yes,
so,
it is the 19th.
Yeah, so you better come up with an invention between
Yeah.
now and then.
I was going to say,
How about the pet rock?
Oh, that's already taken. The chia plant, I like the chia idea. I've invented a lot of really cool things.
Jump to conclusions.
So I'm honored to be there, and I'll be there. But prior to that, I'll be cutting a ribbon or at least hanging out with a bunch of students at USF. You know what I love, though, is the USF students, the UT students, the HCC students. What I'm beginning to see is a really cool, the emergence of young talent in Tampa Bay. And these guys and gals are just highly motivated. Even at my Walgreens, I went to my Walgreens early in the morning at 5 o'clock, and there was a young student. He said, "Hey, I know who you are. I see you in the paper on occasion." We started talking. This guy's a business major at USF, and he wants to become an entrepreneur. And he was the sharpest young man, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm beginning to see it happening here in Tampa. We're going to stay true to our time, so we've got like a minute and a half. Let's just go around the table and say what you want to say.
Well, I just want to start quickly and say that the EDI2 program, the next deadline for our second round of funding is a week from today, November the 15th at noon. You can get the applications on the website at hillsboroughcounty.org/EDI2, and don't ever hesitate to contact me.
Okay, BarCamp is a once-a-year event, but we have Ignite in the spring, and we have Days Of. So I'd like to put a plug in look for the events that we're going to have in a number of different areas on our Day Of events.
Come to Startup Grind on the 21st.
Yeah. Grind.
We've got a lot going on in November. I hate to talk too much about events, but the reason we see all the events we've been talking around the table is November 17th through the 20-something is
22nd.
Global Entrepreneurship Week. It's a Kaufman-sponsored event. It's global in nature, so it's really every cities all around the globe focus on entrepreneurial events. And Commissioner, if you remember, back in 2008, I had you speak at Tampa's inaugural event for Global Entrepreneurship Week. So we have events happening. We have Startup Grind happening. We have the event at USF. We have Startup Weekend happening. There are a number of different things. So if you look for if you Google for Global Entrepreneurship Tampa, you will find all these different things happening, sponsored by all the different tech organizations all around the Bay. And it's a great way to concentrate our grassroots discussion and really talk about the change that we talk about only once a week here.
Tampa Bay is exploding. There is so much stuff going on here. We are creating high-wage jobs. We've got excitement. We've got enthusiasm. We got money. So there's opportunity. But I'll tell you one thing that I'm looking for. I want us to be number one. And my challenge to everyone around at the table, everyone listening, is that Tampa Bay is going to be number one when it comes to job creation. You're going to see us at the very top. See you next week.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
We did good.
Yeah, listen.